Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my review of the latest episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, this time episode 6, Just Jen. Apologies, by the way, that I'm in a slightly different camera angle this evening. I am actually having to wake up incredibly early tomorrow morning because I have a really important meeting. I'm not going to say what about, but it is very cool. But I am actually trying to get this video out and edited really quickly so that I can go to bed and be all fresh and fully myself for tomorrow. So that's why you're getting the different camera angle, because it takes me less time to use this camera than the really expensive one and get all the footage over and all that jazz. So just allow me this one night of being a little bit lazy so that I can be all fresh for some important stuff in my life tomorrow, and I hope you all wish me well on that. Anyways, I will keep this review also similarly short so I can get to bed, but mostly also too because I don't have a lot to say about this one. It's another one of those episodes that I just sort of sat through of She-Hulk, and I was like, yeah, this is fine. I don't hate it, but I don't really find much that I'm really clinging into and loving. There's certain parts of this that I really love the concept of, like for example the idea that that we have with our sort of lawyers having to defend Mr. Immortal, and that's the kind of hook of things that I really wanted this series to be doing, which was having a kind of attorney law show set within the Marvel universe, and actually like kind of paying that off and getting to kind of have that law procedural thing. And while I like that concept of this guy, Mr. Immortal, being someone who he gets out of marriages by literally dying, and that technically fulfills the letter of the law, I find that to be a really, really kind of intriguing idea that you can only do in like a superhero world like this. They ultimately don't really do much with it. It ultimately comes down to like being about the guy being a full of himself asshole, which is again a fine story to take, but it just doesn't really fulfill any of the promise that concept has. It's just sort of like, yo, this dude kind of sucks, and hey, we'll like get with all these girls to like give him he has to pay restitution to them, and it feels very shallow and perfunctory. Not that again that you can't do this type of storyline, but like none of the women have like particularly interesting character. There's nothing unique about any of them. They're just sort of a bunch of women and a dude there. And again, speaking on that, I don't really love the fact that like, hey, look, there's a guy in this group of women. It kind of feels like it's there for laughs rather than him, like his bisexuality being like a thing. I don't really like bisexuality being played for like, oh, look, there's a dude amongst all these women. Isn't that kind of a little bit under the board, like kind of funny? Is kind of how it plays. Even if that wasn't the intention, I don't really love that. And so yeah, there's nothing specific or unique enough about this setup or about these jokes that is worth it, really, to be fair with you. Like, again, I think the jokes could have been there. The concept is solid, but they don't do anything with it that's unique. It's just sort of broad humor that I'm like, it's fine. The stuff with Jen going to the wedding, there's stuff that I like about it here and there. Again, Tatiana Maslany always bringing the energy, and I just love her delivery on all of it. Like, she kills it here. But the jokes are also kind of, again, this like kind of petty humor, and I don't really love the like women infighting thing. That's like, oh, look, She-Hulk shamed my wedding. Ugh, how dare you show me up when I'm the bride? It's my special day. Again, that's like a fair feeling, but it, again, played very broadly with a character we haven't really met before, and so it just comes across as like petty. And actually staying on that, like, I wish like they had actually explored that concept a little bit more with her, because it's like we've been having this discussion throughout the series so far about like her coming to terms with being She-Hulk. And so what does it feel like for her to be like, oh, I can't be She-Hulk at this wedding, and having to kind of like maybe feel like she's hiding a piece of herself for her friend. I mean, maybe this is just me as a queer person reading this narrative into it, but you could have done so much with that in the sense that like, oh, I've been to places where like people have been told like, hey, I love you, but I don't really want you to bring your girlfriend to my wedding. I don't really want you to be wearing a dress as a trans person as my wedding, because it'll be distracting for everyone else. Like, I get that you're queer and I accept you, but not around other people. I just don't want you to like take away from my big day or make a big deal of yourself. Don't be so narcissistic. Like that kind of thing would have fit perfectly here if as an exploration, and they don't really do that. And again, that's maybe me wanting to add that into that, but they don't do anything with it. So I'm like trying to be like, well, what could they have done? And it ultimately just comes across as like really petty humor. The same thing falls for Titania. I get that they're setting up Titania to be like the main villain, which is weird that it took her like half of the series to become that. And also weird considering they also had then they set it up at the end part of this episode, the people trying to steal her blood is also a villain of the series that are slowly coming back up. So it's like they have two villains going on that they also took way too long to get to. So there's that element of it. But Titania as a villain is fine, but again, it comes across as like really petty women bickering, like stereotypical women bickering. And again, there's no analysis further. It's just like two women fighting and being kind of petty about it, and there's no depth to why Titania is coming after her. And again, if the depth is like she's just a shallow bitch, for lack of a better word, that's fine, but again, there's no real like delving into it beyond that, or like adding depth to her shallowness, if that makes sense. So you can have a shallow character, but give her a little bit more. But here's just like, she's there because she wants to get her. Ho ho. Yeah, and then there's just like stuff that's again still defining her by like the dude she wants to date, or like getting hit on. And I know there's like jokes of her being like, yeah, no, I shouldn't need a guy to be defined by, but it's still like defining her character arc. She-Hulk's Jen's character arc by like, oh, is she gonna get with a guy this week or not? And so it's like trying to like lampshade it a little bit, where it's like, oh, isn't it funny? Like people are trying to say you should be with a guy. I don't really want to, but then they still do that storyline. One thing though that I did find interesting about this episode was the choice at the end to have like this message board that is talking about She-Hulk. I find this intriguing because it reflects a lot of things that a lot of women in real life and a lot of other marginalized groups experience. I mean, we just talked recently about like Keffels and Kiwi Farms and how that whole site was also a harassment board. I mean, I experienced harassment from that board. It also goes to like the way that many people online treat women characters within the MCU. So I think that's like an interesting way to go down this like hate harassment message board targeting Jen, and how that's reflected in the MCU. That actually has some interesting depth for me. I don't really know if I trust this show to do anything particularly nuanced or interesting with it beyond like, oh look, women get harassment online, which again, I would love to see a really in-depth story on that. And again, maybe they'll prove me wrong, because I think they could do something cool with that. But ultimately, I'm not entirely sure if they will, but I'm intrigued. I'm willing to, like I said, I'm always someone who's willing to give a show a chance every single time. Every episode, you have a chance to hook me in, and I come in fresh. So maybe they'll do something really cool with that storyline. And again, it leads into the whole people trying to steal her blood thing. That again, it's coming in a little bit late in the season, but we'll see eventually where it goes. So curious to see what to do with this like Kiwi Farms-esque board that is sending harassment towards her. Again, it could have some interesting meta commentary, but we'll have to see. I'm sorry I'm complaining. I mean, I didn't hate the episode. It's not bad. It's just, I guess it's just, I think the feeling is it's just broad and shallow. And, you know, I know I shouldn't necessarily expect more from Disney / the MCU at this point. I mean, the whole point of the MCU and Disney as a company is to tell broad stories for many people to consume. But I just ultimately am like, this just feels so... You know, I was earlier saying, like, I enjoyed this as a junk food show. But the reason I enjoyed junk food is, like, it's not necessarily great stuff, but I, like the taste of it, and it's enjoyable. Whereas here, it does feel like junk food, but it just really feels like empty calories that I'm consuming with no real, like, substance or, like, real fun that like gives something specific to me. Like I'd be fine with the show more, I feel like, if it just had a little bit more to it. And I'm just finding that there's been episodes that I've liked here and there. I think episode, 4, the magic episode, was great. I loved that one. And if they had kept that level of energy throughout the series, I think it would be great. But the past 2 episodes, once they've gotten into the groove of what the series is, it's not been bad. I'm not hating it, and I'm sorry that I'm so negative. I think my criticism more come from a place of like, I see good here, good concepts that you could have done more with, and they don't. And I don't even think, like, people say, like, oh, it's only 22 minutes. They couldn't have done stuff. Like, I think you could have a lot of depth in 22 minutes. I mean, Star Trek Lower Decks is a show on at that comes out the same night. I mean, I have my review up for that too tonight. And it's a 22-minute show as well. And they have a lot of depth and nuance to their characters. There's a lot of, like, pathos and deep-seated character arcs that go on throughout the series. Whereas here, it doesn't feel like it's doing anything with that. It's just sort of like, here's a concept and a setup, and we'll play it straight or as fine as we can. And it's like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm going to forget it tomorrow, but it's fine. And I think fine just bores me. So yeah, I don't want it to come across that I'm like, She-Hulk sucks. It doesn't suck. It's not awful. It's just fine. And sometimes fine is maybe even more damning at times. Who knows? That's my thoughts on She-Hulk episode 6. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. Do you disagree with me? I'm sorry that I'm being so negative on this one. I don't mean to be. I like I said, I don't hate it. But yeah, there you go. I'm just being honest. So hope you all have a wonderful night, and I look forward to giving you the Rings of Power review tomorrow. And I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper. Also, wish me luck tomorrow. I'm excited and nervous. It's gonna be a thing. We'll see.